All right, so let's draw something in perspective. In order to draw something in perspective, I'm actually gonna make this file slightly larger, and we're gonna start with probably about 4,000 pixels. That should be a good resolution for us to play around and do a couple of quick drawings. I'm gonna show you two ways of drawing. One would be more of finding the construction, and the second one would be just sketching it out. So we'll start with construction way of drawing. I'll create a horizon line. I'll use a color for that. I'll use a blue color for that. So what I want to do is create a horizon line, which will be something like this. Now from here, we need to find the vanishing point, and we need to pick the vanishing point. So now we have to take into consideration three types of perspective. There is 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, and 3-point perspective. And the differences are quite small. The way you construct your object's going to be exactly the same, but the result's going to be significantly different. So maybe let's start with 1-point perspective. So what I'm going to do is I'll pick a vanishing point, and let's start with the one that is right in the middle. So with having a horizon line, we're assuming that everything that is below the horizon line is the ground, and everything that is above the horizon line is the sky. And once we are here, we can draw the lines in two ways. One, by clicking, holding shift, and then clicking once again. That way we're creating a straight line. Now you gotta make sure that if you go to your brush settings and you go to transfer, you want to be sure that it's not on 100% or on 0%, because then you're gonna have this gradient going on here, and the whole line will not be exposed. So I just did 84, 85, 88%. This brush is gonna have by default 89% when you load it up. So it's a good brush to use for drawing those lines. And it feels kind of like pencil. So I really like this brush. So let's go from here. Let's go ahead and draw the line. So I'll click, hold shift, and then click again. You can also just draw the line like this, and you can make a couple of tries, and I'm drawing from elbow when I'm doing those. But it becomes trickier and trickier when you do that. So holding shift will make sure that the line is straight. And if you want to draw the line by holding shift, you will only be allowed to draw the line horizontally or vertically, and then horizontally. So, but if you click, creating a point, and then hold shift, and then click anywhere in the canvas, it will connect those 2 points with a line. So that's a neat feature that is available in Photoshop. So we'll use that, or you can go ahead and use line tool. By default, it's going to be rectangle. I have a line tool selected, which is U, and make sure it's selected as pixels, not as shape or path. Okay, so let's use line tool because it's gonna be super accurate that way and really fast and easy to do. So I'm creating lines, and I'm just gonna do 3, maybe 5 of those. We don't need more than that. So we have 5 lines, and all of them are connecting to the vanishing point. Now, we also have to do a horizontal lines, which will define the grid on which we can draw. So our horizontal line is going to look more or less the same. Now, why the distances between those lines are getting smaller? It's because it's getting closer to the vanishing point, which means that those distances going to look smaller and smaller as close as they get to the vanishing point. So you can definitely see that when you have those two lines here, the distance between this point and this point is exactly the same as the distance between this point and this point, but because it's further away, obviously it's going to be looking as it's smaller. Again, we're working in 2D space, so we cannot, the only way we can show perspective and show the depth is by having those vanishing points. Okay, so we have that. We have our grid. Now, there's one way of working with the grids. You can have a grid and use it as your starting points where the intersections are, or you can totally ignore the grid. Imagine where the vanishing point is. Let's say it's right here. I'll press B for brush. So my vanishing point is right here. And from here, I want to decide that I want to draw something here on the canvas, and this is going to be drawn in one point perspective. So I'll draw a cube that is looking pretty much like this, right? This is not necessarily a cube. This is more like it. I'm just gonna quickly erase this part in the middle. All right, so this is our cube. So the way to draw it is think about one of the corners of the cube and where it could be placed in the space here. So I'm gonna place maybe this corner right here. So all I have to do now is I want to draw a line that is hitting the vanishing point and that point. Now I want to do another line which will define how wide the cube is going to be. Let's make it this wide. I'm going to draw another line. And now I need to decide what is this distance going to be, how far this is going to go. One thing that we cannot do is assume that this line here this line here is going to be exactly same length as this one. Because if we do that, let's say I'm going to make a selection real quick. I'm going to press Ctrl J for copying, Ctrl T, and then I will do it like this. If you look closely, you'll quickly realize that this is not a cube anymore, because this line is becoming much longer, and we don't want that. So how do we define what exactly this is going to be? Let's imagine we're looking at this from different angles. So this is when we're looking at it at straight up. So this is 0% or 0% towards the camera, right? The angle in which we're looking at it. So if we would look from the side, we'd have this plane like this, right? This is going to be our camera here. And we're looking at it from this angle. Let's actually make it's 90 degree, to be honest. So let's make it 90 degree. So if we're gonna look at it from, let's say, about 30 degrees, right? It's gonna start to look smaller, because what's going to happen is this point here will start rotating this way, right? It's like a rotating door. And depending on the angle, the distance is going to become smaller and smaller. So as you can see here at about, this is about 15, 30, this is 90 degrees, this is 45, this is about 30 degrees. So about 30 degrees, this is about 45, and this is going to be 90. So about 30 degrees, you see that this distance here, it's that much smaller. So in essence, our cube or our cube is or our rectangle, it starts to look more as a our box starts to look more like a rectangle. So, and obviously it's going to be vanishing with the distance. And again, at this point, it's almost at 45 degrees, it's almost half the size, which when you draw it here, it's going to be half the size. And at 90 degrees, it's invisible. It's just going to be a line, right? But since the camera is elevated and we're looking with the camera down, what our camera is going to see is this distance, right? So it will be about this size. So what we need to do is convert this length to this length. So in this perspective, I would imagine it's about 30 degrees. So it's about, actually, this is about the right angle at which we're looking. So we have to convert this distance, and more or less it's going to look like this. So that's how we would create the base of the cube. And the closer it gets to the camera, the bigger it's going to become. So we're just eyeballing right now. Obviously there's a better way to construct it, but we don't need to focus on that. But you can see the distances are getting bigger and bigger. And the closer you get to the horizon, it's going to get more narrow and narrow. So that's one thing that is important to remember. All right, so let's keep constructing. So from here, what we want to do is we want to create straight lines that are coming out from the corners of that rectangle, right? So that's what we're going to do. And as we said, we want this distance to be about, you know, it's going to be perfectly square from the front. So that's what we're going to do. I'm pretty much making a square right here. And now from here, what I need to do is connect this point with the horizon line with the vanishing point, and this with the vanishing point. So I need to extend this line here because it was not long enough. So it's creating a point, and here just make another connection. And there we go. I'm going to use a different color to highlight our cube. I'm going to use red. And I'll use the line tool because it's going to highlight exactly what I need to show you. So we're going to draw it like this. And there we go. Just a little more precision here. And we have our cube. Obviously, I'm not paying exactly 100% attention to the precision, but that's fine. You can get the gist of it. So what would happen if now, for instance, we would want to change the angle of it? So what's going to happen is as soon as we start to rotate the base of it, we're not looking at one point perspective towards that object anymore. So let's do that, and let's create an object that is rotated. And what's going to happen is I'll move everything we just drawn to right here. And I will actually keep the horizon line right in the middle. And now I'm going to create a new vanishing point, which is going to be right here. We're actually going to make it at the very end, right here. So we have this vanishing point and we have this vanishing point. And this vanishing point will happen in a place depending on how far we want to rotate this. So let's imagine we want to rotate this thing from this corner to about this degree, right? So what's going to happen, this is going to rotate as well, somewhere here. It's right now I'm just kind of eyeballing exactly where, but this could be easily imagined by just having two perspective points all of a sudden, because those lines have to meet in the vanishing point somewhere, those two lines. And those two lines have different vanishing points because the vanishing point's always going to be on horizon line. Okay, so let me show you exactly how you would draw this cube with the vanishing points, two vanishing points right here. So again, we have to go, let's say we have our cube right here, and we have to pick one of the corners. And what I want to do is I'm going to make a rotation like this. And let's show the easiest scenario when it's 45 degrees, right? So our 45 degrees angle is going to happen somewhere in the middle between those two vanishing points. So I would say somewhere here, and I'll pick this point right here. So from here, all I need to do is exactly the same thing, but now we are connecting to two vanishing points instead of one, and then looking for intersections. Okay, so I want this cube to have about this distance, and because we're meeting somewhere in the middle, it's going to be exactly 45-degree angle, which makes things easier. But this is going to be the size of it. So now I want to connect this point right here with the vanishing point, and this point right here with the vanishing point. And there we go. We have a perfect layout for our cube. So now what I have to do is create a height from all those points. You see, it's almost 45 degrees. It's not exactly perfect, but this line is going to be about the same length. So right here, and this is going to be our intersection point right here. and I'm gonna connect it with the other vanishing point, and I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna go from here to that intersection, and from this intersection to this vanishing point. So now we've created a cube that has two vanishing points because we've decided to rotate it. And that's an important lesson to take, because important thing is about when you draw environments is that sometimes your objects will have different vanishing points. Not the whole scene will be having the same vanishing point, which means some parts of the scene will have 1-point perspective, while others will have 2-point perspective. Okay, so we've drawn a cube that is having two vanishing points. Now, what would happen if we wanted to introduce the third vanishing point, which means our camera that we have right here would rotate. So if we were rotating like this, for instance, and moving it down. So what's going to happen is the field of view for that camera is going to be angled, which means there's going to be distortion in terms of those lines. Those lines will no longer be parallel to each other. They will actually have a vanishing point somewhere in the top. Depending on how steep this angle is and how steep it's looking up, those points will get closer and closer and eventually meet somewhere here, right? And vice versa. If this camera, and let's take it out here, let's actually gonna take it, and Control-Shift-J will allow me to cut and paste at the same time, which means I can isolate this layer. So I'm gonna press Control-T to be able to rotate it. So now our vanishing point is going to be going downwards. And that's what I want to do. When you see the vanishing points, normally what's going to happen is everything that is looking down, depending on where the horizon line is. If the horizon line is right in the center, that means the vanishing points will likely be not visible. Those lines will be parallel. It's going to be 2-point perspective. If the camera is looking down, then in field of view to the camera, the horizon line is going to happen somewhere here, which means our horizon line would need to be moved up. Okay, so I'll disable all the layers that we've created. I'm gonna move this horizon line up, and then I'm gonna draw the cube with having those two vanishing points that are on the opposite sides right here. And I'm gonna draw the cube starting from here, just so we do something different this time. And again, it's starting with those connections. So I'm connecting this point with two vanishing points. I'm deciding that the cube is going to be about this long, right? So I now have to make a connection here, and it's going to be probably about this deep. Again, I'm eyeballing. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what's going to be the length. Actually, probably more like this. This makes more sense. This was a little too short distance, especially judging the camera angle at which we're looking at, because right now if we look at the camera, where is it? It's right here. We're looking at, so if we connect these points, we're looking at, you know, a little less steep of an angle. Like this angle that we had here before is less steep than this angle. This is probably 30 degree. So yeah, so that would mean this is going to be a little larger in scale. All right, so I gotta remove those lines that I've drawn because I've drawn them in the layer where we have our horizon line. Okay, let's close this. And from here, I will not create those lines like this, because this is not the vanishing point that we have. We have to pick the third vanishing point, and I'll pick it right here. It's gonna look or actually gonna make it somewhere here instead. It's gonna look very steep, but just to prove you the point, or actually, you know what? Just for sake of making this a little easier for ourselves, I'm gonna duplicate that gray layer or actually select it, press Control T, and then move it down so I have more of that gray layer. All right, and I'm gonna make my vanishing point, instead of being that close, because that's gonna create really weird camera angle, I'm gonna make it right here. This is far enough. Okay, so in order to create the rest of this cube, I'm gonna put it right here actually. In order to create the rest of this cube, what I need to do is I need to connect those points with this vanishing point again. I'm actually gonna move it here because again, it's gonna be a weird angle. This could be a good point. Okay, so I need to connect it with all those corners and actually pass through those corners. So I'll do exactly that. There we go. And now we have our third vanishing point and 3-point perspective. Now, depending on where this cube, where you want this cube to be, like this could be the top of the cube or the bottom of the cube. Let's make this a bottom of the cube, and this line is probably going to be about the same size as this line. So we're connecting it here, and from here we're connecting it here. And now we have our cube. And there we go. We can go pick the pink color as we had it before. Press U. And draw our cube that will be having 3 vanishing points, which means it's going to be sitting in 3-point perspective. 3-point perspective, again, will happen when your camera is tilted either upwards or downwards. And how stretched out those angles are going to be and how much of the distortion is going to happen will depend on how wide the camera is. In most cases, your 2 vanishing points will be outside of canvas. Usually one vanishing point will be inside a canvas and the second one will be far, far outside, depending on what camera lens you're looking through. You have to think about camera lenses in terms of how wide they are. But that's a separate subject to talk about. So this is how you draw 3 vanishing points. And again, what I'm going to do is I will actually merge those 2 layers, and I will merge those layers here, but maybe without those little drawings that we had up there. There we go. So we have 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective. You can delete that. And we have 3-point perspective right here if we disable this. So this is 3-point and this is 1 and 2. All right, next up, I want to do this really quick exercise that will allow you to decipher this kind of photography, for instance, and how to find what kind of construction this is and how you would construct this when you would work with perspective lines and cutouts and everything we've discussed so far. And we're just gonna break it down into very easy shapes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. So I pasted this one in here on the background layer, which is white. So I'm gonna do is duplicate the white layer and change the opacity to something like this. So it's gonna allow me to draw on top of it without making it too distracting, and you'll be able to see what exactly I'm drawing. Okay, so we'll just focus on this part right here. This right here. We're not gonna look at the stairs for now, but I just wanted to show you what kind of construction this is and how easy it's actually to do that. So I'll make the brush a little larger, and first I want to decipher what's the general shape of this. Okay, so the general shape would be pretty much a rectangle. So it's gonna be pretty much something like this. I'm trying to find the farmost edges of this structure, and then I am imagining that I'm actually going to use line tool instead. The line itself, and I can use the cues that I already have in this photography, like this ledge right here. It's showing me where exactly the perspective is going, and from right here I can use this one and sort of make it close to it, but not necessarily on top of it, because obviously it's not aligning, but it's going somewhere this direction right here. And I can make a selection, delete this, and make a selection and delete this. And you can see if I increase opacity right here, we're pretty much having a box. That's pretty much it. So from here, I just want to see what else is here. And basically this box, it's not really this box because obviously there are cutouts. So what I need to decipher is, this would be the easiest shape to explain this whole formation. But now let's break it down into a smaller pieces to what exactly those are. So for one, I know that we have a smaller box right here. And we're gonna use this line right here for our perspective, and I'll eyeball our perspective point right here. There we go. Make a selection to remove unnecessary edges. So we have this box right here. Then on top of this box, because there is erosion here, I obviously cannot account to that, but I'll imagine that this is a perfectly fine looking object. We have another box sitting on top of it, which is about this tall. There we go. And I can erase those edges right here, because they're not visible because we have a solid object. So now we deciphered how it looks. Now this box has a cutout, so I'm drawing it right here. You see how it's cutting in, and this cutout is tapered. Normally your cutout would look like this. So this would probably go like this, and then here. So that will be our cutout. But this looks like a tapered cutout, so that's exactly what we're gonna draw here. So we have like a cutout that looks like here, and it's going deep in, but not too deep. All right, so we have this situation. Now on top of this, we have this more of a weird sort of faceted tapered box with like very soft curve right here. But to make this easy to understand, I'll imagine that it's like a chopped off pyramid. So imagine that this is a pyramid that goes. So in order to create a pyramid, we actually have to do this. We have to connect those 2 points right here and those 2 points right here. So we have our center, and then from center we create a line, and then we want to find how far this line is going. Obviously, the easiest way is to just lead your line right here and connect it to here, and then see how far it goes. It has to intersect through this point. There we go, and we have a connection point right here that we're gonna lead down here. And from here, what I need to do is I will go and delete all those edges that we have inside. Boom. And now I will make a line that is connecting here. And it ends right here. It's chopped off. It's not going all the way up. So I'm making a line right here because it's chopped off on the top. And then from here, obviously, we're following again perspective lines. So pretty much like this, and pretty much like this. And again, deleting. Obviously, when you decipher those things, you're not gonna draw so many lines, but I'm doing this just to show you exactly what kind of shapes are used. And obviously, in order to make this curve, you would have to make a curve like this, and then imagine what this could look like here, and then this curve would be like here. The shading would look different. It's more complicated, but we're making this for the sake of understanding the basic shapes. Then this could be sketched out in a different form. That's fine. We have another pyramid that is chopped off right here, so it would probably go from this point and meet about here, and obviously it's ending right here. Oops, so I'm gonna delete this little edge right here and delete those edges and delete the one here because we don't want to have anything inside. Okay. And obviously from here we do this exactly same exercise, finding this connection. Okay. And from here, we have another big box that is sitting on top of it. So that's going to be pretty easy. We just draw a line right here, here, connection is here, then it goes all the way up, and it goes here. Now, because of the way it's constructed, and because there is an erosion here, and probably this goes all the way in, and there's a curve here, and there's a connection. So obviously this box is actually reaching all the way down here, which we should actually take into a consideration. So I'm deleting what's inside, and I'll draw it like this. There we go. So we have our construction, and then there is a box that is sitting on top of it, which has a line like this. There we go. And again, following the perspective grid right here and right here. There we go. And this box, there's like this tapered pyramid again that is connected to this box upstairs, or like this top of this pillar. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna assume this box that we have right here, And you can clearly see it as soon as I connect those edges and delete those extensions. You can see that there's a box. And then from here, we have an upside down pyramid that is connecting basically to right here. So we have the basic shape. It's very crude, but it basically looks like this. And this technique allows you to sort of decipher what exactly is going on here. And the reason I'm doing this is because now let's imagine you want to do the changes to the construction of it. Let's say you want to have those insets to be not necessarily tapered. You want them to be more solid. So you would basically draw where your rectangle, the inset rectangle is, or the extrusion happens. And then we're not doing the tapering. We're actually going to follow the perspective lines like this. And from here, let's say it's going to be that deep. And just erase those extensions that we have here. Let's put the 100%. So you can see, obviously, I've done a terrible job with making this to be perfectly straight. Should be more like this. But now you have this deep inset or the deep extrusion that goes in, like a little punch in, without those tapered edges. The reason I'm doing this is it's because when you look at photography, it will allow you to deconstruct what you see. And once you have that deconstruction, you can use that to your advantage and copy those shapes. Once you have a layout like this, you can imagine how it's going to look when you rotate it. And knowing your perspective tools and what we've discussed so far in terms of how perspective works, you can take this object and rotate it. Obviously, it will take a little extra time if you want to do it specifically with the construction. But imagine if I want to do a really quick and dirty sketch and just change the angle of it, I would just imagine that this would be something like this, right? So I'm just drawing it really dirty and really quick. Having the second box somewhere sitting something like here. And then we have this little tapering that is happening here. And then another one that is maybe not so high. And then we have this larger box right here. And then we have this sort of more wider box that is sitting on top of it. And then reversed pyramid. And again, I'm eyeballing, but because I already deconstructed what this object is, it allows me to draw it in a different perspective and do it really quick. And once you get used to that, you will actually be able to do those deconstructions on the fly. You will not have to draw those elements. You just see them, and then you'll be able to reconstruct and repaint this from a different angle by just looking at it. And that's the whole point of this exercise. So we have a little tapering right here. So you can see we have our base of the column right here. It's drawn in a different perspective, and you know, it's basically the same thing, just in a different perspective and different camera angle, and also different points of vanishing points, and different lens use, because this looks more of a shallow lens. This is more of a 50mm lens. This is more of a 100mm, which we'll discuss later exactly how lenses work and how they do apply to your environment sketches. But this deconstruction will help you. Once you look at photography, you'll be able to deconstruct every single thing. And it's a great exercise to do. Pick an object from photography, try to deconstruct it this way, and then draw it from totally different perspective, taking into consideration all those details. And it can be as simple as this, where you just do just the boxes and just decide, okay, I don't want to go further than that. Or you can make it really challenging where you're taking into consideration every single detail, including the erosion itself and all those small chunks and pieces. This is going to be really challenging to replicate from different camera angle, because all of a sudden you're having a much increased amount of geometrical objects that are basically creating this whole thing. So again, it's a matter of finding how simple the object is versus how complex the object is. As I've shown you, you can draw it as just a singular box, which is very easy to understand, or you can decipher it and break it down into this kind of construction and then draw it from different perspectives like this. But then again, I'm ignoring quite a few details, including that tapering on this side, the way this edge behaves and how wavy it is, these flowers and this kind of weird destroyed and eroded sculpturing and carving that we see here. All those details that you see on the wall, everything, that alone is a challenge for even a seasoned artist. So this image, taking it and breaking it down, it can be easy task if you just want to learn how to deconstruct, and it can be extremely challenging if you want to challenge yourself to find if you can redraw this whole thing in a different angle.